Ready?
Yes, sir. Action.
Here we go. Hey, this is Troutbitten Tips. Thanks for joining me. Now let's talk about 7 different ways to get a fly deeper, because as soon as we go under the surface, then getting deeper, depth becomes our focus. And if we're using a nymph or a streamer, often we want to get that fly all the way to the riverbed. So getting deeper sooner is the issue. And there are really 7 different ways to do that. Let's walk through all of them. Here we go. All right, so I've written a lot of articles about all of this on Troutbitten. On the website, there are many articles that cover each of these things in depth. So I'll leave links as we go along within this video to those articles. The first of the 7 ways to get deeper is weight. I mean, that's the obvious one. It's the one people think of first. Hey, I want to get deeper, so I'm going to add weight. That's great. More weight is going to get you deeper, for sure. Deeper sooner, right? And you can add weight in the form of split shot. You can add the weight in the form of drop shot. You could add it in the form of a sinking line, a heavier sinking line. And it could be weighted flies. Maybe you add a second weighted fly. Maybe you have 2 weighted flies. All of those methods of adding weight are useful. It's going to get you deeper. All right, so number 2 is just allowing more line to be under the water. This makes sense too. The more tippet you allow to be under the water, the deeper your fly can get. The easy example of this is when you're running a nymph under an indicator. And we can take our Indy, and slide it up the line and allow the nymph to get deeper. We can slide it down the line and there won't be as much line, tippet, under the water, so the nymph won't get as deep. The same kind of thing happens when we're using a sighter. If I have a sighter and I'm tight line nymphing, let's say, and I have it this high off the water, well, the nymph can only get so deep. If I get that sighter all the way down to the surface, the nymph can get deeper. Same kind of thing with streamers. The more line you allow to be under the water, the deeper you can get. So the third way to get your flies deeper is thinking about material resistance. And anything that goes under the water, obviously, takes on drag. And that drag really happens too as the fly is trying to sink through the water. So if you have a big bushy fly with a lot of, rubber legs on it or a lot of dubbing sticking out, it's obviously not going to sink through the water as quickly as something like a perdigon. Perdigons are really popular right now. I think they've become so popular because they catch fish so well. And I think that's because they get deeper so quickly. People are often in that strike zone sooner. And so this fly, for example, has a lot more material to cut through the water than something like that. A smaller fly is going to get down sooner. A thinner fly is going to get down sooner. And so thinking about that is key. Material resistance also matters in your tippet. You can use a 6X tippet and the flies will cut, well, the flies and the tippet will cut through the water a lot sooner than if you use 2X. The easy way to understand this and realize how big of a deal it is to try both. Put this fly on 6X and see if you can get it, see how quickly it gets down. Put it on, literally tie it on 2X and see that it takes a lot longer to get all the way down. Just try it out and you'll see it. It makes a big difference. Now, does that mean that we should fish perdigons and 6X or 7X or 8X all the time? No, not at all. Sometimes we're going to do that. Other times we're going to use all of these 7 ways to get deeper. You make your decisions about the water, the river, the conditions at hand, and the flies that you want to present, and the way you want to present them. And then you decide which of these 7 ways you're going to use to help you get deeper. All right, so number 4 is just drift length. The longer the fly has to drop, the deeper it can get. So if you set up a short cast, then the fly needs to get deep quickly. But if you set up a cast that's twice as long, well, the fly has twice as the amount of drop time to really get in the zone and to be down there where the fish are probably going to eat it. So number 5 is the tuck cast. And when we're trying to get deeper, really, I tuck cast 95% of the time. It's a fly first entry. And if I'm using weight, as soon as I'm using weight, whether it's a nymph or a streamer, I'm trying to get down, and I'm using a tuck cast, which is probably the most misunderstood cast in all of fly fishing. Anyway, I'm using a tuck to force the nymph or the streamer down in. And with the tuck, once you're experienced at it, you get to decide how much momentum, how much force, how much speed you're going down in with. Those decisions are in our hands. So the tuck is very effective that way. One more thing about the tuck. Not only are we deciding how fast it can go down in, but we decide if the fly goes in and then the line arcs in this way or almost straight in vertically. Again, all those decisions are ours. We can kind of give it some grace, give the nymph and the weight or the streamer some grace to fall with that tuck cast. So thinking about that tuck cast leads me to really number six. Once the fly is in the water, you can let it fall. This seems obvious. But if you allow the fly to fall instead of stripping, instead of leading, it'll fall if you have things set up right. If you strip, the fly is making progress across stream or downstream. If you stop stripping, that fly will fall. If we're leading a nymph on a tight line, if you tuck it in, that's great. But you need to let it fall first before you lead. If you tuck it in and you start leading immediately, well, it's not falling as much as it's being led somewhere else. All right, so number 7, the last way to get a fly deeper is get it in one seam. Not just the fly, but then the tippet. If everything is in one seam, it can drop a lot quicker. If you think about it, if you have your fly in one seam and now your tippet is kind of in another seam that's perhaps going faster, then the fly and the tippet are kind of fighting each other, and they're not going to, well, everything isn't going to drop as fast. No, I'm not saying we always want to get into one seam. You know, a lot of times I'm casting over to the bank with a streamer, for example. Well, of course I'm going to be crossing a few seams. But just by understanding that it will fall quicker if it's in one seam, you can make these adjustments. So that's all 7 ways. That's 7 ways to get the fly deeper. And again, by using all 7 ways, by understanding our options, you're going to see what your situation is for the day, for the moment. You're going to use all 7. Understand that you can get the fly deeper in many ways, besides just adding weight. All right, so fish hard, friends. I hope that helps you out. Fish like that, you just know he's gonna eat. You know what I mean? Ready?
Yes, sir. Action.
Make sure there's no boogers. Don't put that in there. You got me punching last time. Here we go.